Hi, my name is Cade, and this is my video presentation for Indigenous Studies 100. I am presenting on the Dani tribe of New Guinea. I will provide general overview of the Dani people, highlighting their society, culture, traditions, and discussing contact with the outside world and how this has changed the Dani society.
The Dani people have a legend about their existence, and it speaks to their fate as humans. They believe that their fate was determined by a race between a snake and a bird. The legend asks, should men shed their skins and live forever like snakes, or die like birds? Since the bird won the race, the fate of man was to die. The legend shows the tribe's beliefs that they have a seed-like soul, and the seed keeps the bird alive. Dani people are considered one of the most isolated tribes found spread out through the highlands. They are also one of the most well-known ethnic groups in New Guinea due to tourists who visit the Baleen Valley area. The islands of New Guinea came under Indonesia rule in 1969. Previous to that, the Dutch had claimed their land as theirs. The island's indigenous population consists of hundreds of tribes with many languages. The Baleen Valley is centrally located in a mountain range, and this is the traditional territories of the Dani people. Contact with the Dani tribe was made in the beginning of the 20th century. The Dutch East Indian Company placed itself with Indonesia in 1615. In 1848, they claimed the west side of New Guinea, splitting the island in half. In 1921, a Dutch captain was the first to meet the outer Dani people as he explored the mountains surrounding the Baleen Valley. The following year, another Dutch captain interacted with the Dani, but his group spread foreign bacteria among the indigenous, and many dying of the disease. American biologist Richard Archbold explored the Baleen Valley in 1938. While flying overhead, he spotted rows of cultivated fields, which was a sign of life. It was during this exploration he encountered the Dani people. He was shocked at how far removed the Dani were from the rest of the world. He compared the Dani people to 21st century Stone Age society. He reported the Dani practiced polygamy, cannibalism, and clan warfare. At this time, his contact with the Dani tribe had no metal tools. Traditionally, the Dani were Animanists who believed in local gods and water spirits. The Dani's tribe's religious practices changed in the 1950s when accessibility to the isolated valley improved. Christian missionaries flooded into the area. Today, many Danis practice Christianity but still practice many of their traditional ceremonies. Religious ceremonies are accompanied by singing and dancing and offering. The main social units of the Dani people are village compounds. Each compound is made up of a confederation, associated with specific areas and have up to thousands of people. The primary purpose of the confederations is to pool resources for pig fests and other ceremonies and to create a military organization. The Danis live in straw huts and their villages are surrounded by stone walls. They have small farms throughout their territory. Compounds are led by non-hereditary big men. They set up informal based on a man's status, which is determined by how many pigs and wives he possesses. The leaders of the compounds protect the village and conduct ceremonies, organize pig feasts, and wage war. Community organizations in the Dani tribes were determined by family and hereditary relationships. Dani still live in their traditional compounds, organized around men's houses. Men and women sleep separately, and children stay with the women. Polygamy continues to be practiced with the Dani men and are able to have up to as many wives as he can afford. A dowry is 4 or 5 pigs given to the family. Traditional Dani's tools were made from stone, bone, pig tusks, wood, and bamboo. Men used bows and arrows and hatchets for weapons. The Dani had no pottery, art, or cloth. but by the 1980s, cloths, metal axes, knives, and shovels had become widely used. Before contact, seashells, feathers, and spears were used in trade for pig and salt. Basic livelihoods for the Dani's tribes are agriculture, farming, and raising pigs. They continue to rely on plants they've cultivated, such as sweet potatoes, bananas, sugarcane, and tobacco. Sweet potatoes are one of the Dani's staple foods and have an importance to their culture. Sweet potatoes are important bartering tools, especially in dowries. Men prepare the fields and women do most of the harvesting. Men are responsible for protecting compounds, and women are to do the domestic work. The elderly raise and teach the children. The pig feast is one of the main ceremonies of the Dani culture. The success of the feast is often determined by the number of pigs slaughtered. Pigs are a symbol of wealth. Pigs are worth around $125 a piece and are often targets of theft and the source of conflict. Unmarried women have traditionally worn grass skirts, while married women wore a skirt made of fiber coils or seeds strung together and hung below the abdomen to cover the buttocks. Older Dani women often go topless. Younger women began to wear top of clothing as contact with the outsiders increased. Women carry bark strings, backpacks with their heads to carry children, piglets, sweet potatoes, and other items. Dani's tribesmen wear a traditional item of clothing known as the kotika. The term simply means clothing. It is made from dried out grout. Most outsiders believed the kotika was worn as a display of sexual desire. However, the Dani use it simply to cover themselves. There is no correlation between the size or length of the kotikas and the social status of the men wearing it. Kotikas of different sizes serve different purpose. Very short ones are worn when men are working, and the longer, more elaborate ones are worn for festive occasions. In the early 1970s, the Indonesian government launched Operation Kotika to try and modernize the Dani. The Indonesian government determined the traditional wear was unacceptable. They regarded it to represent backwardness and the opposite of the modernization movement. Boxes of Western clothing were airdropped to the Dani people in an attempt to convince them to move away from their traditional clothing. Western clothing is required in public places, on public transport, and in government buildings. The Dani have low levels of education, but since the 1990s, more people can read and write. Religion is seen as a way to heal or cure or earn good health in the tribe. The Dani believe they are born with a soul or a ghost inside of them and have curing ceremonies because if the soul is uncured, the person will fall into a mental sickness. Men perform the rituals or are considered to have magical curing powers. For the women of the Dani tribe, death involves both emotional and physical pain. Traditionally, the Dani women would amputate a part of their finger in ritual thought to ward off spirits. This practice of finger amputation was banned by the Indonesian government. However, many old female members of the tribe can be identified by their hands, and it is still believed this practice continues in secret. Many death ceremonies are associated with warfare and calming ghosts. Death out of warfare is believed to be caused by magic or witchcraft. The ghost needs to go into the forest where it can cause no harm to the villagers. The dead are usually cremated but sometimes mummified. Some mummies are 200 years old. Only the Dani's most successful warriors were preserved, and warriors were decorated with one necklace for each enemy they killed. These ceremonies are performed with a pig fest. Cannibalism is reported among the Dani. The Dani's philosophy about cannibalism relates to their spiritual beliefs. They believe by eating an enemy, the soul and energy is passed on to the man who eats him. The liver and the heart from a courageous hunter, and the brains of a wise man, and the legs of a fast runner were gifts the Dani valued and consumed, it is believed that these gifts would be passed on to the person eating them. Some Dani people have entered the market economy of modern times by growing and selling rice and working labor jobs. Some Dani people have begun to attend formal education places. However, tourism has been one of the most profitable ventures for the Dani people. They act as tour guides, pose for pictures with the Kodakas or mummified warriors. They also perform in mock battles in the annual Baleen Valley Festival. Today, the Dani tribe are one of the most exposed tribes to the outside world in the Baleen Valley because of tourism. Tourism has resulted in the Dani's people cultural ceremonies and traditions being put out on display and sold. Tourism has changed the Danis' way of life. The uniqueness of their culture and the beauty of the Baleen Valley has brought more tourists to the region. The effects include the cultural interactions with foreigners, which has weakened the Danis' culture. The Danis exaggerate their cultural ceremonies and traditions for economic gain, a term known as zooification. Tourists will pay large amounts of monies for a picture of men wearing the Kodaka and in hopes of trying to get one as a souvenir. The Dani ritual warfare has attracted many tourists from around the world. Every August, the Dani hold mock battles with neighboring tribes to celebrate the fertility and welfare of the province and uphold ancient traditions. In this mock battle, it is said they are appeasing the ghosts of their ancestors. Spectators view this as a display of warrior skill and culture, and some participate in the battles. In conclusion, the Dani were discovered by explorers accidentally. Missionaries entered the territory and began to Christianize the people. The government imposed policies that prohibited certain cultural practices that went against the image of modern society. Despite these efforts, the Dani's culture continues to remain intact. They have been able to coexist with modern societies. However, contact with the outside world continues to weaken their culture. The Dani people have a very rich culture despite the efforts to modernize them. They maintain a spiritual and cultural balance. This research has taught me no matter how remote or how far removed a group of people is, there is still the need to explore every piece of the world. The Dani people were discovered quite recently compared to other indigenous tribes, leaving them to engage in their traditional ways of life for a longer period of time than many other indigenous people. However, once contact was made, the Dani society has been commercialized and the process of assimilation is occurring.